Well, hello everyone and welcome to another Goodwood Carpool. I'm Ed Foster and I'm the Deputy Head of Motorsport Content at Goodwood. Now today we're not actually at Goodwood, we're in Buckinghamshire because a certain 9-time Grand Prix winner, Mark Webber, wants to go for a bit of a drive in the countryside. So of course I said yes, and here we are at Mark's house to have a chat about his time at Red Bull, Minardi, Jaguar, Williams, and of course the time in 2015 when he won the World Endurance Championship with Porsche. Thank you very much for sparing a bit of time and coming on a sunny drive with us.
No worries, mate.
It's a bit like Australia, this weather.
Mate, we've turned it on. It's fully imported, mate. I'll invoice you later.
Right.
I'll invoice you later, buddy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we might as well start with kind of the most recent stuff. I've been very kindly lent this Porsche, which I'm still slightly trying to get my head around.
Yeah.
But when you look back at your time with Porsche, do you kind of look back at it as one of your kind of highlights of your career? I mean, obviously, World Endurance Championship and champion in 15.
Yeah.
But it was so different to what you'd done for so many years before.
It was. I think the highlights are still Formula One.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Porsche period of my career, which is still going now, obviously to a degree. Chuck a left here, mate. Which is still going to a degree. Was the teamwork, building a new team in a way too. We were a lot of people, obviously typical Porsche.
Yeah.
It was done really, really well, but we had to build a new bunch of people there. So that was enjoyable, and I totally underplayed how much I enjoy getting on with my other teammates in a positive way too, because I never had much experience of. I had in the late 90s, but I was young, and when you're not as engaging about teammates at that age as when you are a bit older. So loved driving for Porsche. And the cars were gorgeous. They were quick. The 919 was great. So yeah, the highlights. There is some highlights. There's no question about it. Racing for Porsche is clearly a highlight. But from an individual perspective, of course, the Formula One, victories are hard to beat.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this later, but I think everyone has sort of Formula One memories in their head, and there's a couple that always really stand out for me, and that was Jensen singing "We Are the Champions" when he won. Mainly because I don't think he's really a singer. Well, he certainly wasn't on that day.
He definitely wasn't. He drove well though.
And then the other one was your win at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
And the noises you made over the radio afterwards.
Yeah.
Is it still really fresh in your mind, that feeling of finally breaking this Formula One?
Yeah, absolutely. That was like a huge relief. I think that having had a few close shaves on getting the victory and it not being able to make it stick on the day, and then that one in Nürburgring in 2009, obviously it was so fantastic that everyone else had a smooth day.
Yeah.
All the big boys did have a smooth day, so that was nice. I started on pole position, and really it was a Grand Prix which, without blowing smoke up my ass, obviously I dominated the day, which was nice.
Yeah.
So
but you didn't have an easy race, did you?
I had a drive-through penalty as well. So yeah, that was. I think that celebration coming out on the radio was, the release of so much, the years of work, and you've broken that sentence of never won a Grand Prix. Did win a Grand Prix. So yeah, that was a massive day. 21 years, I think, anniversary between the Australian National Anthem being played for us on the podium as a winning driver. So chuck a left here, mate. Yeah, so it was a big day, and it's great that our sport doesn't always let the driver, the emotion of what goes in. If you watch Roger Federer at Wimbledon, if you watch many other sports, you can see what the individual's going through. But in our sport, with being strapped into the car with a helmet on, you don't see what we're going through often. So I love the opportunity to see whether it's myself or other drivers be able to relay that to the people back at home, what we're going through in the cockpit.
Yeah, because I always think it's the MotoGP celebrations, whether it's Lorenzo or Rossi or are amazing, but it's just something you can't have in F1. But you're a big bike fan, aren't you?
I love MotoGP, mate. I'm MotoGP tragic. I watched the 500cc boys back in the day. I've got a couple of buddies through different generations, I suppose, now and the past champions. So my dad had a Yamaha dealership growing up, so dirt bikes was very much part of my early childhood memories, and the fun and the need for speed, and so I enjoy that, mate. Honestly, it was brilliant. So you're right, the celebrations are awesome on MotoStreet. They can get up on wheelies is a nice. A nice way to,
or into a Portaloo.
Portaloo, whatever. Jump in the water. Valentino. They definitely sit down during the week and scam these plans on what they're going to do and how they're going to celebrate. Which is, we can't do too much of that. I was shattered when I think they banned the flag for the winning Grand Prix drive. They need that flag in the cockpit. Let's get that flag. And those early memories of me watching whether it's Nigel Mansell or Piquet Senna, Prost. Being able to be patriotic and play that card as well as the individual cards they have, which clearly every driver could have, which there is an element of it now. But the MotoGP guys, they are different characters, I think, because they can express themselves in a different way.
But you've been to the TT as well, haven't you?
Been to the Isle of Man many times, yeah. So tight with John McGuinness, and it's God, that is.
It's mind-blowing.
It is. If you want to see a level of just how courageous they are, and that's the word which comes about up there often. Obviously, you can talk about madness and all the rest of it and crazy, but at the end of the day, they're confident in their abilities. They're controlling a extremely high-powered machinery, and they are completely at ease with what they're doing. They're nervous, absolutely. There is adrenaline, yes, there's all those things, and that's what they love doing. So you have to accept that that's what they like doing, and I go there to see the display of courage. Is clearly awe-inspiring, and it's magnificent. So I love all sporting events, man. I like speedway. I like rally. I like jungle riding. Sorry, yeah. So it is. I'm a bit of a
sports fan.
I am a sports fan.
But when you were younger, am I right in thinking that your dad kind of got you into go-karts to sort of start what might have been quite a wild childhood? Yeah,
I think I'd certainly had potential to not go off the rails, but I think that it was an opportunity for myself I grew up in a rural area, which was nice, big sporting community. So I played a lot of sport as a youngster. I loved, swimming carnivals or tennis, cricket, golf. Played Aussie rules. I played rugby league. Rode my dirt bike. So I was really a jack of all trades and legend of none, so to speak. But Dad I think he saw in my eye, obviously, the passion for it and the love for it, and I was doing his head in. I was absolutely doing his head in terms of, rerunning races and Formula One races and watching it over and over again. And interestingly, I was addicted to formula racing. I wasn't so big on touring cars, which in Australia is a big thing. Yeah. So I was very, very, from an early age, I had my ambition and I suppose my passion was very much towards Formula One, which was interesting. So then, to your question, how does he find the right levers to pull to keep me, on the straight and narrow? Go-karting was a option, and something which my dad worked 6 days a week. We had 1 day a week with him. So my dad was a hard worker through that period of our life, and he saw it then as he never saw my first go-kart race. I went with friends, a go-kart rail, used someone else's go-kart rail. My dad didn't see me race for the first time because he was working that day. So father and son time, I think he knew that he was planting the seed for a period of us to have that time as well, which worked out awesome. Yeah. So it was great.
But speaking as a 6'7" bloke, you weren't the perfect shape for a karter.
Bloody shocking, mate. Bloody shocking.
Because I remember reading something about your percentage body fat kind of in your final years of F1.
Yeah.
What was it again?
Well, I was very low. Obviously it's all open for interpretation. Depends on who sort of measures you with these. They've got these skin fold calipers, right? They've got these 7 or 8 points of measurement. So they measure it in mil of fat on you, or like you say, percentage terms. So it was for sure, around 3 or 4% at times, 4%. I think 3 is very low. It's probably too low. Probably 4 I was. But anyway, so I was I had to be, because at that time there was no, as I think they're doing next year in Formula One,
Yeah,
they're going to
finally.
they're going to have an average weight, and which I would have loved to have had, obviously 10 years earlier. But that's the way it was. And look, it's never ever been an advantage to be bigger to do our sport. So I then, go-karting was good for me. I enjoyed it. I loved it. But honestly, I really started to hit my stride. First time I drove a racing car, like a formula car, was when I started to, hit my straps, so to speak. I felt comfortable in a racing car, on a bigger track, in a bigger car, and I started to, frankly, probably blow some of the people away that were really hard to handle in karts for me.
But you won the New South Wales Championship.
Yep, I did win that. Yeah, it was pretty, I did some reasonable high-level karting in Australia, but I never did anything in Europe, obviously, because I started a bit late. Like 13, 14 is very late, to start a career, man. Look at, we've got some guys arriving in F1 now at 18. So, look, I think we fluked so many scenarios, and you just got to make it work. There's no real rule book or sort of schedule or, manual on how you're going to get through your career, because everyone's got that little individual scenario. What country you're from, of course, budgets are a huge problem, and how you get through all that.
So, but you in '95, just talk me through how on earth you managed to come over to the UK and then end up driving in the Formula Ford Festival.
Yeah.
Because if you were to say that to someone nowadays, to come over and basically talk your way in.
Yeah.
And get a drive, and then finish 4th overall in the Formula Ford with the best Formula Ford drivers on the planet.
Yeah.
It was quite a leap.
It was massive, mate. It was massive. It was quite, it's basically I was racing 1600 at the time in Australia, so 95 1600 championship, and then over here there was 1600 and 1800 at the same time. So into 95 I came over, and I wanted to at least I wanted to do the 1800 festival. I wanted to come over and try and give that a go. And 1600 festival. And Ralph Furman, the boss of Van Diemen at the time, Ralph said, mate, you're going to get smoked at the festival, because the 1600 guys, there's so many specialists. And I hadn't driven for 3 months, because our championship finished in August. So I'd been pounding around and driving. I literally had not driven a Formula Ford for 3 months. So, because as I say, our championship was done. So I came over, and Ralph sort of poured definitely a lot of water on the old fire there, and sort of said, well, it's not going to really work. How are you going to do this? So planning again, back to that naivety and what the hell are we doing here? We come over, we thought we were going to get a bit of a run at it, but it didn't really work. And Ralph said, I'll tell you what, but we'll give you a test in the 1800 car. So you can have a test in the car, because I raced with Van Diemen in Australia. We had a good relationship, and Ralph, you could see that I had done some good stuff with the product down under. And I did the test in the 1800 car, and then the day after he said, I think you should do the festival in the 1800 category. I'm like, 1 minute, you're not saying 1600, now we're game on for the big one. So I'm like, no worries, let's do it. So I think I finished third. I think I finished third. Or, whatever. It was actually second, pipped on the line for third. So it was unbelievable. First race. I think I qualified 8th or 9th for the final, and it was a very certainly a baptism of fire, mate. I remember seeing yellow flags out, and guys were still hitting me in the arse and in the braking areas, going, this is an interesting type of racing over here. So you got to roll your sleeves up really fast. Loved it, and Ralph said, look, come back next year. You got to see for 40 grand. And I drove for the factory team the year after.
Yeah, but the year after, you got some really good results. You won the festival.
Yep.
But I don't think you were that happy, were you?
I was definitely homesick. The first year was tough. First year over here, I struggled in the middle part of the championship. I was winning races, and then there was like 3 or 4 races where I just absolutely didn't really turn up, and I'm like, I was struggling in the UK, being away. I hadn't seen. It was the first time in my life I had, a pretty massive gap from seeing the family, which these were just all firsts. It was all new to me, to how I was going to deal with that. So I went back to Australia, and it hit me straight between the eyes. I went back for like 4 days and went, I'm missing bloody nothing. I've cranked myself up about totally nothing here. I've got such an insane opportunity in Europe. And you can't have both. And people talk about sacrifices and, I did this and I did that. Well, if you want something enough, it's not a sacrifice, because in my opinion, because you've got to you got to be prepared to do things that other people aren't. So I went home with my tail between my legs, come back with my tail back up again, going, righto, here we go. Finished the season really strong. Christian, my teammate, won the championship, but in terms of I won the festival, I wanted to, the European Championship, I was leading that with a race to go, and Ralph said, we're not going to do that, I want you to concentrate on the festival. So I would have liked to have won the European Championship, but Ralph was very much, he wasn't as bothered on that, because that was the same weekend as the festival, so we just concentrated on winning the festival, which thank God we did. So, good times.
Yeah, because the F3, I think, I can't remember what the budget was. It 230,000 or something.
Yeah, it was around 230.
And you got just under half of that.
Yep.
So actually, come June, there was no more budget. But you won at Monaco.
Yeah, we won in one of Brands. So
Right.
I was leading, from pole, fastest lap, and that was a game changer for me, because, like I say, we had 100 grand. And that was everything. We were done. At 100 sterling was done. Yellow Pages had chipped in. Dad tried to help it there. We begged, borrowed, steal. We had David Campese involved as well. So it was like we were really hanging in there on our, on our coattails. And halfway through the season, it was going fantastic for us. We were never going to beat Jackie Stewart's team, and it's quite interesting that we talk about Jackie right now, because his house is just around the corner here.
Right.
But as we've got Checkers on the right here as well. But
We've got 2 more seats.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Keep picking people up.
We can. So, but Jackie's team was, as you'd expect, phenomenally well run, and had a brilliant relationship with Honda and Neil Brown engines and all the rest of it. So. So to win was tough, and I did win in Brands, and then Mercedes rang and said, we'd love you to test the sports car, because Gerhard Berger, I think, was ill, or something had happened around that time, and then the cascading of events around that with the drivers. So Alex Wirtz was then going to replace him, who then Mercedes were a seat out in the sports car program.
Yeah.
They said, would you like to do the next race? I'm like, mate, I was only doing Formula Ford 6 months ago, and you want me to drive this, CLK sports car? Yeah, exactly. So I said, I think we need to just calm down a little bit. I absolutely, totally want a relationship, and we can start to build something for the future. But I think we're pulling the trigger a bit early here. So the relationship did start up, and we went into a contract together for the future, and they paid the rest of my Formula 3 season, and got third at Zandvoort, first Honda home there, first Honda home in Macau. So Renault were very strong at that time with engines, and Toyota and the flyaway races were very strong as well. So Honda engines, it wasn't an easy time for us, but I love the Formula 3 car.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. 97 was great memories with Alan Docking Racing, was great.
Yeah, but that was quite a mature thing, because if you're a young upcoming racing driver and you get called by a works team offering you a drive, what do you think? 1 in 100 would turn around and say, no thanks, but can I test?
Yeah, I still remember this phone call. I was sitting on the stairs in Aylesbury, and chuck it righty, mate. And it was Norbert that rang up, and I'm just like, I just actually managed to put my head in the car mentally and just go like, this thing's going to have so much power. I just felt I was going to be massively undercooked to do myself any justice. So I had to show some balls, I suppose, to do that. And I think they respected that call too. I mean, AMG were, and it wasn't only until 2 months later I still got to test the car, and we actually did it in a way I thought which was sensible, which was, let's test the car, let's go. I mean, just go straight to Nürburgring for 1,000k. Yeah. It would have been, I think, a disaster. Yeah.
But because it was, I mean, I suppose you were dreaming about Formula One when you were young and watching all the repeats and Mansell and things like that. And I suppose going to sports cars was a bit of a sidestep, but at that time you could still quite easily get from sports cars back into F1.
Yeah.
More so than now, perhaps.
Yeah, momentum-wise, it was a challenge, because it was not the traditional route. Like you say, there was some people doing it, but it was safety for me. I had no sponsors. I had to keep this career going, and Mercedes were throwing me a bone in terms of giving me a chance to continue to compete in Europe, and obviously a factory drive, and so that was incredibly rewarding. And I got to work with great people. I got to work with Bridgestone, for example, on all tyre development, and this was a great opportunity for me to work with great people. So yes, Formula One, it was like, oh dear, is it going to be over? Am I in trouble here? Is the dream going to be over? And I'm just going to be, drilled down into sports cars, because when we then did have all the incidents that we had with sports cars in terms of, you know, the accidents and the crash with Mercedes and all those things, they were very keen for Mercedes for me to continue to stay in DTM, and that's where I did make the call to go, okay, I'm going back to single seaters.
Well, we'll talk about Le Mans in a second, but was there also talk of maybe IndyCar as well?
There was, yeah, which was, you know, around 99 when we had the problems with you know, the cars flying in Le Mans, and I said I don't want to drive this car anymore, which everyone could understand, and a lot of the other drivers were in the same boat, because the regulation, you know, we had, you know, Michele Alboreto lost his life tragically with a puncture, and the car took off, and and a Porsche also flipped in Road Atlanta. So, you know, the regulations were dangerous and the cars were flying. It just so happened that Mercedes did it a little bit more often and high profile. Yeah, exactly. At Le Mans 3 times in the space of 4 days, which was clearly a disaster. So IndyCar was on the radar, and I said no. I think the best thing is to stop the relationship, because if we can't find, I was trying to get work with Mercedes through McLaren at the time, who was supplying engines, to be a test drive McLaren or do things like that, and Ron was clearly controlling McLaren, which at the time he was, and not Mercedes. So it was very, very challenging to find the right timing of them sort of pulling themselves out of motorsport. They had driver talent on the radar, which I was one of those. I wasn't the only driver. And tragically, Greg Moore got killed. That
was the slowest, fattest pigeon.
It was the slowest, fattest pigeon, mate, yeah. Tragically, Greg got killed in Fontana, and that was a big, you know, signal again to me about IndyCars, that, you know, I just wasn't keen to go to IndyCar, and having still had my drive set on my internal drive set on making Formula One.
Yeah. So Le Mans, I mean, obviously you went back with Porsche and had a very, very different experience to your Mercedes time. But for those that kind of don't know about what happened it was 99. It was probably one of the weirdest, well, not weirdest weekends, but I mean kind of most shocking in a way, because it all went wrong, but it didn't just go wrong; it went wrong twice.
Yeah, we hadn't had any. But it all started to unravel, honestly, in the pre-test, which is always traditionally a couple of weeks before the Le Mans race. And we quickly found out that we were going to get our ass kicked, and we were slow, and we were not quick on the straights, and we were not quick around the corners, which is a bit of an issue when you're trying to do fast lap times. So we thought, what are we going to do here? So they tackled straight line. So we said, okay, well, let's try and rip some downforce out of the car and make the cars fast on the straights. So we tried that. Bernd Schneider and myself went to Hockenheim and tested without the chicanes at the old Hockenheim. We went straight through the old chicanes for big top speeds, and everything was going along okay. We felt that we did find a bit of lap time, even though the cars were going to be tricky to drive for long stints, and we had to obviously work with Bridgestone on, you know, with the lower downforce and get the tyres a bit more stable for us. And then we went to Le Mans for the actual race itself. And on Thursday night, I was after Mulsanne hairpin. I was just coming back down through Indianapolis there, and it took off. It flipped for the first time. So there's a lot of rumours around that we had flips in practice and we had flips in private testing, which is absolute total bullshit. We didn't. We had. The first flip was the one I had, and still it was not a very public flip. It wasn't filmed. It wasn't Thursday night. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so no one saw it. It absolutely totally happened because the roof was destroyed, and you can't destroy a roof unless you did go land on it, which I did, and then the car righted itself, and I finished up beside the barrier. It was quite funny because, well, it wasn't funny at the time, but the French marshals were like, yeah, just park in here, it's okay, just park over here, because they hadn't seen the flip, obviously, 300 metres down the road. I had hardly any brakes because obviously I lost a few calipers and steering and obviously hydraulics and everything was, she was definitely a wounded girl at that point. And the French, yeah, it's okay, just over here. So I parked it up, and I thought, what the hell? And yeah, I just thought, here I am, Thursday night, young driver, and maybe this is it, It's amazing what you think of, when they say it all slows down, and there was no panic at all. There was no panic in the cockpit. So, yeah, that was a lucky escape, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I had yeah, I got through that, and Friday's a rest day, and then they built a brand new car, and I think it was, well, nearly illegally, sort of, you can only homologate obviously a certain amount of cars. I think they got another chassis brought in, and which, because Mercedes was there with 3 cars, and we scraped everything together and got another car ready to go. And I went out for the warm-up on Saturday morning, everything brand new car, brake rotors, and I mean spanking new, everything spanking new, ready for the race. And down Mulsanne for the first time, and I just went over the old hump, which was obviously much steeper than it is now. I went over that hump, and then she never came down. She never came back down. So they flipped again, and I just thought, well, at this point I don't want any pain. I'm not going to be lucky twice. I was kissed by some beautiful angels on Thursday night. Hopefully these beautiful angels are going to give me a kiss again, and they did. So I was very fortunate to survive that accident as well, with not any nasty injuries. So, and that was it. That was it for me anyway. And then they still decided to do the race, and then obviously Peter Dumbrick was the famous footage of him flipping into the trees. Yeah. So, and I was furious. I mean, I was absolutely livid. I went to the pits, and I was just like, how can they have done this? Like, if Peter had, I thought Peter was brown bread. I thought he was gone. I mean, how's he going to survive this? He's gone into the trees, and it was a brilliant, stroke of luck that he did walk away from that. So
because even more recently, Le Mans, it is still a very dangerous race.
Yep.
Simonson, we got McNish, Alan had a massive one. Mike Rockefeller, same race. Well, I think that was literally a few hours later.
Davidson, Anthony.
And there's been some big shunts. But when you were at Le Mans, did you enjoy it when you were with Porsche?
So what didn't I enjoy? I suppose it's a long week. It's 8 days. It stretches out. I love driving. In terms of all the other things that come with Le Mans, a lot of guys love that.
Yeah.
I'm not massive on that. I just want to get into the race and race days. So getting there the Saturday before the race was always something I struggled to get my head around.
Yeah. Then you had to talk to lots of annoying journalists as well.
Yeah, it was it's brilliantly French, isn't it? It's like the Tour de France, which is a phenomenal event, and it's very, it encapsulates the whole week. It gets, Le Mans comes alive. It's clearly one of the biggest car races of in the world.
Yeah.
It's and practices, drags out, and it's like, so it's a long old week, and you just never know what sort of card you're going to be dealt with. I think I've led 4 out of the 7 attempts, or 5 out of the 7 attempts, and obviously the best result is second. So, I think 15 was and 16 were both tremendous opportunities to do well. And I think 16 in particular, I think that we really were on fire. I think that our car, when you say, did everything line up and look like they deserved to win? I would say yes. Did we win? No. We had a water pump failure, and that was it. You don't. So that's Le Mans. So it's a very it's a bizarre, such a long race. Things happen. Le Mans chooses you to win, and I think it's open. I never said that I always loved Le Mans. It was a brilliant event. It's unbelievable. It's dangerous, as you say too. There's so many. It's quite frightening sitting in the driver's briefing and seeing sort of someone that is, frankly, 25 years older than you and 25 kilos heavier than you, and they don't enjoy the best exercise regime. And you're like, I am on track with this guy, which is not overly comforting when you come from, and call it snobby, call it what you will, but that's just the facts. That's how it is. When you've been at a different type of racing and you come to that, it's actually quite a bloody shock to see that. So. But it's a special race. It's unique, and the gentleman drivers make it up. Yeah.
So going back to your single-seater career, because you were sort of, I think through Eddie Jordan, you got introduced to
Stoddy.
Stoddy, and things kind of happened quite quickly after that, because you used Formula 3000, and that went well, and then suddenly you were offered the first few races in the Minardi seat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and obviously you're 5th in Australia.
Yep. off we went.
Yeah.
So
because that all suddenly happened quite quickly, didn't it?
it did.
Yeah.
It did, and it basically happened when Stoddy and Eddie were great, because Stoddy was really I had, again, no funding, no backing to do 3,000. I mean, 3,000. How the hell am I going to afford a Formula 3000 budget? Never. I just had 70,000 German marks from my previous season of Mercedes, which was their glorious salary, which they paid us, which was fair enough at the time because it was better than having to bring money. So so I was on the way, but I was still paying people back off. So to get Stoddy to underwrite a lot of that Formula 3000 budget was great. And then when I signed with Flavio, then he could open doors, which I haven't been able to open in the past. And whether it was with getting a Minardi, testing for Benetton. I did a lot of miles for Benetton, and that was important for my grounding to get comfortable with the fast cars. And so he did do that, and then obviously with Nicky Lauda at Jaguar, obviously Jaguar just Nicky had just left Jaguar at the time, sorry. But Flavio sorted out the deal there with Jaguar. So it did. It sort of, through that period there was a bit of Tom Walkinshaw involved. It was, like I was now with definitely different characters, and people might say, how the hell did I operate or work with Flavio? I never had an issue with Flavio. Never had one issue.
He has some big fans,
yep.
And you're one of them. And then he has the opposite as well.
Absolutely.
But you're quite a staunch kind of a supporter of him.
Well, he never did bad by me at all. He was extremely consistent with me. He gave and found me some tremendous opportunities. He always delivered on what he said he would do to me. So, look, it was the trickiest time, undoubtedly, in our relationship was with what happened with Singapore. With the crash with Nelson Piquet Jr. So obviously that was something which, clearly I was disappointed with.
Yeah.
And we spoke about that, and there was a lot of pressure at that time with Max Mosley and Flavio's drivers to put pressure on Flavio's sort of book, if you like, with it was Kovalainen and PK and Fernando, myself and De Grassi, I think, and there was quite a few guys. So when all that was washed out, I think that Flavio then had even more respect, I suppose, if it was possible, for me in terms of, it's hard to gain his respect, and that one was, sort of stood by in a way. I mean, obviously not publicly, I wasn't sort of, absolutely, saying it was the right thing to do, which clearly it wasn't, but it was a big stuff up, and but I still gave him a second chance on it.
Was that, because from the outside, it seems there's a lot fewer politics in sports cars, and is that something that kind of wore with you a bit? Because you're a straight-talking guy, and Formula One is just kind of it's constant politics. Everyone's got an agenda, and actually, it's an entertainment show really, in terms of TV. But there's so many politics. It maybe sours things a little bit as a driver when... Yeah,
well, I think because there's just so much money involved in F1, and when you've got that sort of coin floating around, you've got to be ahead of the game, and if that means, not manipulating or, there's politics in the background, is it, whether it's a governing body, whether it's engine manufacturer, whether it's a bit of media, whether it's, just the areas of sort of cultures, how's, for example, for me, I mean, just in terms of how the German press with me was quite tough, and that's just, mate, get on with it. You've got to suck that up. How do you deal with it? How do you then, that goes into your PR bracket, and sort of, there's a lot of different scenarios that are evolving in the background in Formula One, and even up until the weekend, like that safety car in China was like, the race we're all falling asleep, and then the safety car came out. Was it really needed?
Yeah.
Bit of tissue paper on the track. It happened. Boom, we've got a race on our hands now. So they knew that's the sport. Does everyone at home know all about that stuff? Probably not. Do they need to? Probably not.
Yeah.
Show goes on.
Yeah. So in terms of F1, because you did your time with Minardi, and that first race finishing 5th.
Yeah.
In Australia, having I think done 17 miles of testing.
Second one here, mate.
Second one.
Yep.
And I mean, you must have thought. Well, I don't think you probably thought, well, this is easy, but it must have been a bit of a surprise in a Minardi from 18th or 19th on the grid.
Oh God, it was a bloody absolute fluke. It was a fluke, mate. We had the car was so unreliable in testing. Turned up at Melbourne, and Stoddy said on the grid, "If we can just finish this race, mate, we've got a full house." It was an incredible size crowd. The event was going from strength to strength, and yeah, I just managed to hang in there, and which went brilliantly well. And Mika Salo did put pressure on me at the end of the race. Managed to survive that, and we got those points. And Stoddy said, "Look, now you're in for the season now, mate. That was fine. Obviously, those 2 points, the old currency, top 6. Then it wasn't, as we have now, top 10. So to get 5th in the first race, Ralph Schumacher did take half the field out. We're in a tight lane now, and we've got a cyclist in front. So
I don't think the Panamera particularly likes narrow lanes.
Yeah, it's very narrow.
How do I turn that off?
Yeah, right there.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. That's what comes of having a Porsche Works driver in a Panamera.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a brilliant. The party, mate. Oh my God. Yeah, the party did go on, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant, mate. So it certainly helped the start of our career. Yeah.
And then obviously you had time at Jaguar, which wasn't kind of really a huge success, and then I think there was an option to go to McLaren after that, and then obviously you chose Williams.
Yep.
What happened with the McLaren? Because
well, that was an interesting period because the Jaguar was very good over one lap, and so I used to qualify extremely well, and I was comfortable with that too. So because I remember the one lap qualifying when that first came out, I thought, shit, I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to see how I go, because I think every driver thought that. You've got one shot, bang, see what you can do, and it turned out to be a bloody massive strength of mine, and that was good for currency. I was very highly regarded for that. The car was very unreliable, lost a lot of big points with the Jaguar, and we did have, when I say we, myself and Flavio, in terms of management wise, we had a lot of options, because I remember Ron Dennis saying to me, what's the situation with your contract at Magny Corps in 05, and I said, well, I'm open, of course. He said, well, I'm happy to talk to you about coming to join McLaren, but no Flavio. So that was a bit of an issue for me. So Flavio, then the options were Renault or Williams. And Williams were in a bit of a purple patch result-wise. They were going pretty well, fighting for championships with Montoya and Ralph at BMW. And, sort of 02, 03, 04 period through there. And Renault hadn't really fired yet. They were not really hitting their straps. So I'm like, the emotion side of me did go for Williams, because I was definitely keen to drive for Frank and Patrick. And in the end, if I had that again, of course I would have. Hindsight is a brilliant thing, right? But look at that, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah. Really nice. Yeah. I would have gone for the Renaults, because the Renault, they built an absolute rocket ship.
Yeah, 5.6.
Yeah. Brilliant.
People always say hindsight's a wonderful thing, but actually it's a terrible thing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Life would be so much better.
That's right, mate. Yeah. So the Renault was a rocket, and I would have won Grand Prix earlier, and that would have been better for me. But obviously, at Williams, we the relationship with BMW was going south. All the BMW partners, when we had, whether it was with Allianz, and we had a lot of, I think HP was there. There was a lot of partners that were sort of multi-contracted into sort of with the BMW link there potential. So that was, they all left at the same time, and then we had another year on the contract with Williams with Cosworth engine, which we did an okay car, but at the end of the day, it was just hand-to-mouth stuff, which in the end we couldn't get the job done. So I went to we went back to Red Bull, which Flavio said, to be fair, he said, look, they're going to be doing things, because at the time Red Bull were not. There was a party team, people aren't taking them serious, and Flavio said these guys are going to change. Dietrich under Dietrich with Red Bull, they're going to get their stuff together. And I'm like, man, I'm just going from Williams to another scenario the same. I'm just going to be like, this is not going to work. He said, well, what else are you going to do? I said, well, we're going to give Red Bull a go. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant how we managed to, podium-wise, it was lean on the ground. I think David had one podium with Red Bull, so it wasn't exactly, it's great to be with that ascendancy of Red Bull. Yeah,
because it really kind of switched on in 2009 when Adrian kind of had a proper, the new set of regulations came in.
Yep.
What was Adrian like to work with? Because I spoke to DC about him briefly, and he's slightly different, I think, from other engineers in the sense that he's quite a human engineer.
Yep.
And he looks at things very differently.
the best I've ever worked with.
Really?
I mean, he just, I don't know. I mean, Adrian thinks he's a phenomenal driver. He drives pretty well, but
So good.
with left, mate, yeah, which actually helps to a degree.
Yeah.
You know, he's certainly, we'll put it this way, if I had to design a Formula 1 car and to do a lap time, Adrian's better than me, because he can not do a bad lap time, but he can do an unbelievable Grand Prix car.
Yeah.
But he just has this incredible ability to ask the right questions, and he absorbs it. He absorbs what the driver is saying to then give him, or both of us, the confidence to go down development avenues to develop the car to make it go quicker. He is a competitive monster, Adrian Newey. He hates losing. He loves developing the car, making it quicker. He wants it to look sexy. He has a very, very good, you know, the aesthetics are very, very important to him. He hates being pinned around with regulations and these things. So when I had this chance to work with Adrian, it turned out that aerodynamics was something which I really, really enjoyed, which I didn't know until I started working with Adrian. You know, that other teams and engineers I work with, I didn't know that was a bit of a strength of mine. So we really did work hard together on developing, particularly the front end of the car, which was very, very important in Formula 1. And I enjoyed that with him because he was asked these questions. You're like, where's he off to with this? And then 3 months later, you go, that's what he hopes for. If something comes out of the pipeline, it's like, yeah. So, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know, he's a racer. He's a nerd. He's a top bloke. He's having a beer with him. He's everything wrapped into one.
Yeah.
And people forget how many generations across regulations he's developed cars.
Going all the way back to his Indy cars.
Yeah. So he is an absolute legend of, you know, and it's quite interesting. There's a bit of a side topic on that in terms of, you know, how they're going to try and, you know, going forward in terms of man hours and trying to, you know, cap man hours and cap how people work with inside a racing team. I mean, Adrian Newey doesn't use the computer still too much. He does a lot of drawing. How are you going to work out how much?
Take his pencils away. Like a
take his crayons
child.
away. How are you going to work out how much drawing he's done? So because you can do that at home, right? A lot of his ideas are done.
Yeah, you can't turn the brain off.
No. So he's a brilliant guy.
In a way, I mean, I've never actually thought of this, but in a way, is Adrian Newey a bit like Frank Williams in the term of being really competitive and an absolute racer at heart?
Oh yeah. I mean, they are cut from the same cloth in that sort of mode, if you like, because they are, mate. I mean, Adrian, he is sick as a parrot. If he gets done fair and square, he hates it, mate. He hates it. And for him to be, you know, if you and honestly, if you think of let's say the last 10 Formula 1 cars he's helped design, along with all the team at Red Bull Racing. There's, you know, Rob Marshall and guys here. When, you know, we've had so many, you know, great guys there helping out on the design process. But if they had more horsepower, you know, I mean, the cars, you know, it's a broken record when you hear about this bloody party mode and qualifying. It is a broken record. I'm sick of hearing it. At the end of the day, Mercedes have done a better job. That's it. Yeah. But the horsepower, it is known that, you know, he's never had the most horsepower in the back of those Red Bull cars the last 10 years.
Yeah.
He hasn't. So if they did, I mean, I think F1 would be dead right now because they would have won everything. So, but having said that, Mercedes have done a beautiful car. There has been seasons where they have done the best of everything. They have had the best car and the best engine. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but we can't really talk about Red Bull without talking about Vettel. And I mean, there were kind of, I suppose, there were 2 times when it kind of really kicked off, and that was Turkish Grand Prix and Multi-21 Malaysia. You mentioned earlier that it was really, you know, the German press obviously gave you a hard time. How hard is it in F1 when, a bit like Hamilton and Rosberg 2015, how hard is it when actually you really just can't stand the sight of your teammate?
Yeah, I mean, they were tough times. I think, you know, tough times because it's exactly what you want. You want to be in that situation fighting for a world championship, obviously, but it's very, very hard when it's within your own team. And in 2010, there was 4 of us. There was, you know, that's what also made it quite challenging that, you know, there was Seb and myself and Fernando and Lewis. You know, took it to the last race in Abu Dhabi, which was, you know, how often does that happen? You I think it was 86 was the last time that happened. So that was a ferociously fought championship throughout. We all shared our wins. We shared our stuff ups. There was probably 2 shunts between all of us that year. There was, some very, very, have a little right here, mate. There was some very, tense moments. And yeah, Turkey was one where, the way the race went, I led most of the race, and it just was so tight on fuel in that race too. And it turned out obviously that Seb being in the tow for so long. Early in the race, I fought Lewis off, and then after that, Seb jumped him at the stop, and I had Seb behind me, and fuel consumption wise we're on the limit, and we had to start tuning fuel down. And Seb, because he'd been in the tow for the first sort of hour and sort of 15 of the race, he'd actually had a little bit more juice, so that was quite interesting. So you can keep the engine up. So the battles were that finely as they were, as you saw with when it is. There's nothing much left on the table, and you want to ask, well, is he in the same mode? Well, no, he's not in the same mode, because he's been in the tow for the whole race, and it's just turned out now that I need every bit of power I can get now. We're trying to close this Grand Prix off, and it had been a stalemate for lap after lap after lap, and Mercedes, Lewis and Jensen were sitting right there, and they hadn't been able to get the move done. So anyway, he got the tow, and because there was a bit of chat before that about engine modes, and I did turn my engine down because fuel was critical, and Seb did have a bit more juice, I think, at the time. So anyway, contact, bish bosh bash, wasn't good. And it was the first time that obviously, and the last time, we only hit technically once on track, hardcore wise, but so that was the start of, and I saw Helmut, obviously, his position was obviously very negative against me at the time. And I was leading the championship. I'd won the last 2 Grand Prix from pole, so it was like, it was pretty frustrating not to get the sort of, I was almost, it was quite inconvenient that I was potentially going to win my 3rd Grand Prix from pole, and I had led the previous 160 laps, So anyway, it was tough times, and we learnt a lot about each other, and then Multi 21, which was much later. Our relationship was
3 years.
I checked out by then. I'd signed a Porsche contract. It was all done, and Ferrari were sniffing around at the time. There was a chance to go to Ferrari for the last 2 years of my career, which was actually very close to be happening, but we just couldn't get. Luca wanted to meet me. Luca Montezemolo, these very, very late, and just sort of stretch out the negotiating. Flavio gave him a bit of an ultimatum, and it just didn't work out in the end. So I stayed with Red Bull for that next year, and job done. So it was. When we've seen that with Seb, there is periods where obviously with a helmet on, things happen, right? Things happen, and I think I've definitely had some stuff ups, no question. I have had some hot moments, absolutely. But in terms of, there's been some with, I think Michael and Seb, sometimes you see these scenarios, it's like, they don't need to do that. But they did do it. It's like bizarre why they went that low to do something which was like, they're so good. They don't need to do this stuff. But they do, whether it was Michael at Raskas, whether it was Seb in Baku with safety car. Like, wow, mate, why did you do that? So you can see these flashes of mentalness which comes out, unfortunately.
But your relationship with Seb is probably quite different now.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, we had Recce in Bahrain this year. Look, we put it. The gloves are off back then. Now it's like, okay, why should you have such a big grudge against something that was clearly was a professional battle at the time, and we did what we could in that period. So now I think that you should be able to shake hands, move on, have a glass of red, and we have had some very interesting chats about that period.
So there was an article years ago in Motorsport magazine when I think you were speaking to Nigel Roebuck, and you were talking about Seb, and I think that this was back when he was still very much with Red Bull. There was no rumour of Ferrari or anything like that, and you said the thing with Seb is that he's achieved everything very young. He's got a kid now, or there was maybe before the kid. What will probably happen is he'll go off, have a drive in a red car, and then sayonara.
Yep.
And so far, you've been kind of bang on the mark with that.
I think maybe I need a crystal ball, mate. But I've gone.
You played the lottery.
I've gone okay. Actually, I said to Anne last night. I said to I said, let's start the lottery. I actually want to start. I saw the numbers come up and the Powerball, and I thought, I'm not a gambling man, mate, at all, but I thought, stuff this. Let's start doing the lottery again, just for. Anyway, I
get annoyed when I don't win when I haven't even entered.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so Seb is doing that, as you say. He's doing that right now, and So that's that.
And I mean, obviously, you know, you raced for so many years. Do you still miss it, or I respect because I suppose TV is quite cruel in a way because you go to the tracks, you're doing the same routes, same circuits as you did when you raced.
You can chuck a Yui here, mate, if you want.
Chuck a Yui.
Yep. There's a quiet one here, reversing there, mate. Yeah. So do I miss it? Absolutely. Yeah. I do miss it. Nothing could replace F1. Yeah. So it was very difficult after F1 to find something that really did replace that. The Porsche leading off on that driving drug, if you like, was perfect, an absolute perfect tonic. Just straight through, mate. Perfect tonic because I loved working with Timo and Brendan and all the team there. We had an absolute blast on bringing that through and using my experience from other Formula 1 category. But you have to have, it's called reality, and my great friend Pat Rafter, the tennis player in Australia, Pat says, mate, it's reality. He puts a big F-bomb in front of it, but he says, mate, it's reality, mate. You know, you had that period of your life which was incredible. Of course, you know, you pushed yourself to the limit. You were professional, disciplined, and it's almost like it was a different person. You know, there's things which you put yourself through, and that the standards you set yourself, you know, it's very rarely sustainable for your whole life to do that. You can use the same standards in other business practice or TV or, you know, family or private, professional, whatever, but you can try and use some of the envelopes in that. But in terms of, can I compete in Formula 1 today? No, I can't compete in Formula 42. It's not possible to arrive at that level with that. Having done, I think Rubens is, the record is like, 15, 16 seasons or something? Tired, finished, you know, and when you're young, you hear these people talk about if he can keep his motivation, he'll be fine. And I'm like, how can you lose motivation? What are these guys on about? I'm never going to lose motivation. Yeah. I am never going to not hungry for this. Well, you do. You run out of steam, and the risk, you see things differently. There's barriers there that they've always been there, and all of a sudden you've noticed it for the first time. Yeah. You're like, shit, that's always been there. And now I'm like, that's an issue for me now because it's a bit closer than I'd like. So you do miss sections of it, mate. You've got to get over it. Live TV's fun. You know, I enjoy that. I like to try and explain to people at home what we're going through, what they're going through in the car. And guess what? If I do a podium, for example, it's not about me. You know, I think some people go up there and you know, not DC or Martin, any of those guys, but there is some guys that go up there, some other people, they think it's about them, you know, and it's not about it. We're up there with the talent, you know. We got to get the best out of the talent, what they went through. So that's fun and engaging, but you've got to get over it. Yep. Yeah.
Well, so the competitive instinct though doesn't really die. So you must still be playing lots of sports.
That's right. Yeah.
Damon Hill said that when he retired, he found himself in the wood chopping trees down with a chainsaw.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not that, is it?
It's not. I'm not doing that. But it is, and that's back to that standards, right? And it's that accountability to yourself, and you don't lose that overnight. That's hard because you do realise that, can I do it as good as I used to be able to? No, so that's not good. It's like watching an old boxer. You're just like, oh, we don't want to watch an old boxer. Who wants to watch an old boxer that knows that he still wants to try and do it, but he's just going to get bashed, you know? Yeah. So that's horrible. So, but is he still got some great standards? Absolutely. And with a driver, it's the same thing, of course. You know, you learn, you have to work with a lot of people. You have to get the best out of the people around you. You're a beacon, so that's a great quality to have going forward in your life. You know, consequences, risk management, you know, all those things, you know, brilliant. If I do this, well, that's going to be a penalty. Oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to, you know, I'll play it safe and do this. So, you know, Formula 1 is brilliant in flushing all that out of yourself pretty fast because you need action. People, all the small talk and all this and all that. We want people that are doers. People that are doers. The stopwatch never bullshits. What you're able to, you have to be able to deliver on certain things. So for me now, I love doing the odd mountain bike race. I love the outdoors. I love dogs. I love aviation. I like flying the helicopter when I can. I love traveling to Australia. Brilliant family out there. Mum and dad are flying. My sister, Anne. So with my wife. So it's good. And you sort of often you want to reflect on the graft you put in and say, okay, so what? Let's tick all the fun boxes and try and do things. But you still need that engaging element of stimulation, which you're going to do what you can to find, but as I say, it's very, very hard to replace that being on pole position and having your mechanics walk away from the car and say, mate, it's over to you now at Monaco. That's tough to beat.
Yeah. So what do you think of the current regulations and the current cars? Because I always think it shouldn't be like basketball, Formula One. You shouldn't be able to have passing every 5 seconds and passing to be meaningless. But that we're still up against this barrier of cars not really being able to overtake unless it's with DRS, and then it's kind of slightly artificial.
Yes.
What do you think about it all?
Yeah, it's just go straight in, mate. Yeah, the cars have become extremely aerodynamically sensitive. So in terms of the front wings, we know that they're very easily to be disturbed, and then it's easy to get into a train, which we saw in the first part of the Chinese Grand Prix. We saw in Melbourne. We didn't see in Bahrain because it was a bit more DRS involved, and there was a bit more tyre degradation. So there is artificial things we can move around, as you say, to make the passing more often, but is it genuine racing? So that's always the fine line. What do I like about the cars at the moment? I like that they're quick and challenging. I like that there seems to be some penalty at the moment for getting things wrong. I like that. We have to have the best drivers being seen, and seeing it being sometimes tricky to hang on to some of these cars and guys spinning and making mistakes. I think that's good. I like the lap times being quick, but obviously with super fast lap times comes super aggressive braking points and hard for guys to get a move done, particularly when it's a one-on-one chess match. If you haven't got, if you're, for example, racing Fernando Alonso and, you've got a Lewis Hamilton or someone, it's hard to get a move done, cleanly and fairly with because they're so good at this. We're talking about tenths now. We're not talking about a seconds difference unless someone's on the wrong tyre. So, wow, the sport has got a lot. I'm massively old school. Would I like the Grand Prix distance to be changed? No, I wouldn't. Would the future generation of viewers like it changed? Probably yes. Is it too long for them? Could well be. So we've got that. Is Friday necessary? Probably not. Do we need a 2-day weekend? Could well do. There's so many things on the table right now to make the sport easier to consume, easier to watch. Spending for the team. Can we put more money in other areas to make the sport better? Could well do. Mate, Liberty, they've got so much on their plate now from a regulation perspective, and now embedded themselves in a new regulation for 21 going forward. What's that going to look like? So there's enough on, and car racing in general, that's a question. What does that look like in 10 or 15 years from now? People racing cars. Are we going to have a steering wheel? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this drive in 15 years, mate, with a steering wheel in here? Yeah. Who knows? So motorsport in general's got a bit on.
Yeah, but it's. I always think if you're talking rugby union, you could have the top 8 teams in the world play each other, and you won't know who's going to win. You'll have an idea, but anything can happen. And in Formula One, that hasn't really been the case, but partly because of reliability, but also I think with the nature of motor racing, you qualify, you put the fastest car at the front, the slowest car at the back, usually, and then you expect there to be lots of overtaking.
Yep.
Which I guess is it's not really going to happen, is it?
No, it's not. And the good guys are at the front. They're in the best equipment. So it is, the ingredients are not really there for a phenomenal show. We know when there's a wet race, brilliant. We know when there's a driver out of position, brilliant. But is he going for victory, or is it stimulating to watch him come back through to 4th or 5th? Probably yes, but it's not the battle for the lead. Now, yeah, so it's a real challenge, mate, to work out. And MotoGP does not help Formula One in that sense, because that is everything we might want to talk about as a topic in terms of learnings. Okay, so race distance, for example, motorbikes take up much less percentage of the track in terms of width, so they can be more, the versatility of their lines is much higher. So I think for us, the learnings from that, they're the best in the world on two wheels, but they can race each other. They can race against each other, and it's not easy to predict a winner.
No.
So what do we do with our cars? Well, I think the track design's important. Entry to corners, making the corners wider on the way in, so they've got more options to get things done. That's an option. Less aerodynamic sensitivities around the front wing, so they can follow closer. So there is some answers in there, but you're gonna have to knock the purity around and knock the sort of the real technicity around a little bit to keep the entertainment factor up.
Yeah, but interestingly, MotoGP is a great example because they pushed for this control ECU. Obviously, Honda really didn't want to go for it because that was where their development was. That's where they were better.
Yeah.
And there are similarities with F1. Going for control, standard parts that aren't so important. The teams at the front of the grid will hate it, but in MotoGP, as you said, it's tough to predict a winner, and Honda's still there.
Yeah.
Winning races.
That's right. So that Rubik's Cube has worked for MotoGP. That looks good, doesn't it? So, I mean, okay, so what can we learn? We can get everyone very, very tight. So even if we button everyone down to within, let's say we bring a bit of Force India, a bit of Renault, a bit of McLaren, and now we've got a lot of people within the same time frame, but in terms of winning the Grand Prix, you're still going to have operational, you're still going to have strategy, you're going to still have, the best teams will still find a way offline to probably, still win that race with, stuff ups in pit stops or whatever bits and bobs. I mean, Ferrari, not a good example, obviously, but so MotoGP, there's normally it's flag to flag, isn't it? So it's sort of man and machine, if you like. But Formula One, there's so many other ways to still help the driver win the Grand Prix, and also if they are on the same lap time, it's still not guaranteeing they're going to get the move done, because it's just saying, well, if you've got 4 Mercedes cars, 4 Red Bulls and 4 Ferraris, we'd all like to see that. That would be nice, but it still would, at the start of certain Grand Prix, for example, Melbourne, the race would still not be, in my opinion, not any better, because they cannot race each other. So,
it's difficult. So I want to talk a little bit about Max Verstappen, because he kind of burst onto the scene, and loads of people were saying for quite a short period of time that he was way too young. But he hasn't had a great season so far.
No.
He's, and I read a quote somewhere about someone saying that this is Max Verstappen. It's not necessarily him being too young. It's the way he is, the way he is, the way he's hardwired.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an element of truth to that, or is he still very much learning, and actually this season's been quite telling in terms of his age?
They come together. They absolutely come together. So I think it was Austria last year was the first time he started to put sort of polishing up those Fridays. So we had a lot of Fridays last year where he was off the road a lot, making a lot of mistakes, which causes headaches in the garage. The mechanics have got to repair of that car, right? So that can be a higher risk for reliability things in the future. You just bring more stress in the garage. So if you can start to execute clean weekends, so starting it up, clearly qualifying over one lap, I think he's done a pretty good job of that. We can't question too much of that, but there's just, every now and again, there's key decisions. There's thousands of decisions a Grand Prix driver makes over a weekend, literally thousands of decisions, but every now and again, there's 5 or 3% of those decisions are crucial, and that's the ones he's got to start nailing better, because we've seen some rash and hasty decisions from his side that he believes that he needs, in his mind, that he has to do it like that. Well, we can all look back, and again, we can say they haven't been good decisions. So is that age? Is that because who he is? Is that going to be better when he's 25? Absolutely. So I think it is as he is, but as you get older, you get better. Knowledge is a great thing to have. So he will get better, but and he's humble. He's so good to listen to. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, he's got so many bloody tricks in his box. He's so good.
Yeah.
But there has been a couple of howlers this year where, you know, we saw in China, you know, did he need to do the most technical, most difficult passing move for the whole Grand Prix with the grip advantage he has to pass Lewis Hamilton around the outside of turn 7 in Shanghai? No. Did he try it? Yes. What's Lewis going to do? Put him in the marbles, run him out of road. Fair play.
Yeah.
That was the result. Chance of victory, gone. He was the guy to win that Grand Prix. Daniel, savvy as ever, brilliant, came through and did what he needed to do.
Yeah.
So, just like to see Max polish up those you know, rash, hasty sort of moments.
Yeah, and you mentioned Daniel there. I think he doesn't get the kind of press that he deserves, in a sense that anyone who can go up against someone with the speed of Verstappen and match them toe to toe and beat them. Because I think he's a quiet guy. He's sort of, I don't know why he hasn't, he isn't. Well, when people talk about the fastest guys in F1, they mention Seb, Fernando, Lewis, but it's not often that Daniel's in that list when actually he probably should be.
Yeah, he's a brilliant racer. So I think the qualifying, again, this bloody illusion of qualifying, which Daniel probably even admitted himself, Saturdays is not his strength.
Yeah.
So qualifying the outright speed, Saturday is probably not his strength. Sunday is, where Max is, or when you say Seb or Lewis or whatever, those guys on Saturday afternoon, unbelievable. So that's all I can say to that. But Sundays, I mean, holy hell, God, he's bloody dynamite, isn't he? Yeah.
Talking of teammates, we talked about Seb earlier. Are there any other teammates from your kind of going all the way back to F3 Formula Ford that were really sort of tough to beat, that kind of still stand out now?
Oh God, I had Antonio Pizzonia was my teammate at Jaguar, and he was in testing. He was unbelievable. Like he used to do lap times in testing. I'm just like, I got some problems here. This guy's flying, and I think it was a couple of things, because I wasn't a phenomenal tester, not in terms of technical development, but in terms of actually stretching the last few tenths out.
Yeah.
He didn't deal with race weekends that well, so he was very interesting to see how, as a teammate, how sensitive teammates can be, or drivers can be, about performing when you've got to perform. That was interesting, and I learned that with sports cars too, where with your teammates before starts of races, obviously you've got 6 Porsche drivers, and you're like, and certain things that other drivers would mention that is an issue. It's like, why is that an issue? Like, just focus on yourself and get on with it and go. But they got themselves cranked up about something over here, which is like not going to affect the performance at all. So it's quite funny how teammates do tick. But David Coulthard was great, mate. DC was good. I learned a lot off DC. He was at the back end of his career, obviously, but it was very good for me to see his practices and work ethic. That was important. I had Nico Rosberg at Williams. I mean, Nico was pretty quick. But Seb really was the biggest pain in the ass. Yeah, so he was quick. He was big work ethic, and obviously, he's not gonna. He could get 5 world titles, right, this year. So, so it was great to have the battles with him for all those years, and but yeah, so I did okay up until him.
You did all right against him as well.
Did okay. I mean,
in 2010, it could have gone either way.
It could have gone either way, man. It was down to the last points. Yeah.
Okay, so we were very nearly back at your house. So what we'll do is a quick game of word association, and you need to say, it doesn't matter whether it's a word, a sentence, a paragraph. The first thing that comes into your head. So we'll start with Paul Stoddart.
Massive opportunity. He's a wheeler dealer, chain smoker, and a good Aussie battler.
Right. Next up, Adrian Newey.
Genius, personal friend, and absolutely brilliant to work with him. And I learnt a tremendous amount of Adrian.
Okay. Jaguar.
Gave me a great step up to continue in Formula One. It was a great shop window for me to drive for the team, and I get on well with a lot of those mechanics still to this day.
Yeah. Flavio Briatore.
Well, he was he guided me through the contractual situation through Formula One. He never let me down, and he always delivered what he said he was going to do. And yeah, he's not for everyone, but and I don't do a huge amount with Flavio, but he was very, very good for me in terms of my racing contracts.
Sebastian Vettel.
Clearly, world-class driver. Down a bit more, mate. Yeah, keep going. Yep. And you just think of, I think of how good he is. You know, I think of just how consistent and how good he is. And he certainly stretched me. He got more out of me than I probably would have ever got out of myself. So, and he's very German.
He's got a reasonable sense of British sense of humour.
Yeah. You know, a German sense of humour is no laughing matter, though, right?
Excellent. Right. So finally, just as we're putting in now, Porsche.
Well, a dream phone call when they rang up. I thought that I was a Porsche owner before they arrived, and to this day, great to work with them, incredibly consistent, and I had fun. I had fun driving their cars, you know, with my teammates. So, good days.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Mark, it's been a very fun last hour and 10
minutes. No worries. Incredible
so
questions, mate. Incredible. Top man.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
He's good.